picture this. You're looking out over these mountains in China's Guizhou province, but instead of, just peaks and valleys, you see these enormous shimmering blue, seas covering everything.
Yeah, it's visually striking.
Totally. And these are massive solar farms. But what our deep dive has uncovered, looking at the sources, it's far more shocking, honestly, and complex than just generating electricity. Prepare to have your ideas about solar farms flipped, really.
Absolutely. We've gone through a lot of information, and it paints this truly unbelievable picture of the impacts these huge solar arrays are having.
Right.
They're not just sitting there. They're actively changing the landscapes, the ecosystems, even the local economies in ways that are frankly astonishing. So yeah, forget that simple idea of solar farms just taking up space. The reality is much deeper, much more surprising.
Okay, let's start with the scale. China's whole renewable energy push is just staggering on a global level.
It really is.
By 2024, they had something like 339 gigawatts of big utility-scale solar and wind under construction.
Right, under construction.
Yeah, and to give you some perspective, that's more than 4 times what the next 4 countries, the US, Brazil, UK, Spain, were building combined. They only had about 72 gigawatts together.
It's dominance, there's no other word for it, and the speed is just as incredible. China actually hit its 2030 renewable target 6 years early. Think about that. By the end of 2024, they had 886.66 gigawatts of solar installed capacity.
Just solar? Wow.
Just solar. And they added a record 277 gigawatts just in 2024 alone.
That's unbelievable speed.
It is. And specifically in Guizhou, the place with those blue seas. By 2020, their solar capacity had jumped 5 times over, hitting more than 10 million kilowatts. Even the early stuff, back in 2015, could power around 1,300 Chinese homes.
So how did they pull off this massive growth so fast?
Well, the sources point to a very deliberate kind of top-down national plan.
Okay.
You're talking big government subsidies,
Yeah.
easy access to cheap bank loans, and really importantly, strategic decisions about where to put these things, allocating land in places like Guizhou.
So not just happening organically.
No, not at all. This was a national imperative, driven by, yes, environmental goals, but also critically, energy security and economic growth, a full package.
And that leads into something really fascinating. You mentioned this sort of hidden agenda.
Right, this idea that putting these massive solar farms on mountains in Guizhou, land that wasn't really great for farming before, it was more than just finding space.
Okay.
It looks like strategic land management. And this is where we get into this really innovative concept called agrivoltaics.
Agrivoltaics. This is where my perception really started to shift. Forget solar panels kicking farmers off the land.
Yeah, flip that idea.
Imagine growing food underneath the solar panels, like these photovoltaic mushroom farms in Fujian province. Integrating solar there apparently boosted mushroom yields by 20%, improved the quality, and is expected to bump up farmers' incomes by something like $11,000 per crop.
Per crop. That's a huge deal for those farmers.
It really is.
And right there in Guizhou, we found this company, SBIC Guizhou Jinyuan. They're growing taros, pumpkins, chilies under the panels across 133 hectares.
Wow.
And get this, they're producing 750,000 kilograms of produce. That's worth about $275,000 USD. And it's boosting local farmers' incomes by around $70,000 USD overall.
So the solar farm becomes part of the agricultural system.
Exactly. It's concrete proof of this integration happening and benefiting farmers directly.
And it seems like there's a real synergy there. The panels provide shade.
Which is crucial, right? Especially in drier areas. It cuts down on soil evaporation significantly.
And that shade is actually good for certain crops, protects them from too much sun.
Correct. And the flip side is the plants underneath can actually help cool the panels down a bit.
Making them more efficient.
Potentially, yeah. It's this really clever way to get more out of the same piece of land.
Okay, that's already pretty surprising. But then there's this next layer, which is, well, frankly shocking.
This is the ecological restoration part.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's mind-blowing.
There was a study you found, right? In Qinghai, at the Gong Photovoltaic Park, this huge solar site in the Tahltan Desert.
That's the one. And the finding was just almost unbelievable. The area directly under the solar panels, it had the best ecological health rating.
Wait, better than the untouched desert next to it?
Better than the untouched desert.
How is that even possible? Solar panels healing the desert.
It sounds counterintuitive, I know. But think about it. That consistent shade traps moisture in the soil. It lowers the ground temperature, reduces evaporation.
Ah, okay. Creating a little microclimate.
Precisely. And that allows vegetation to actually grow, microorganisms in the soil to thrive. It becomes a kind of refuge.
Okay, I'm starting to see it.
And the numbers back it up. We saw one agrivoltaic project where vegetation cover went from less than 30% to 85%.
85%.
Yeah. And land moisture evaporation dropped by 30 to 40%. And it's not just Qinghai. We're seeing similar things on the edge of the Tengger Desert in Gansu and in Inner Mongolia's Kubuki Desert, where they've transformed 2,000 hectares. It's this sea of solar blue, but with life thriving underneath.
This completely flips the script, doesn't it? The usual argument is solar farms have this huge footprint, potentially negative.
Right, but this suggests they can actually be a tool for land healing, for restoration, turning that footprint into a positive.
Which has massive implications for, like, climate change resilience, water conservation, reducing heat stress on land.
Exactly. It's not just about cutting emissions anymore. It's potentially an adaptation strategy, too, helping ecosystems cope with changes that are already happening.
And what about the people? The direct impact on communities?
Huge. Absolutely huge. We saw examples like the Guizhou Poverty Alleviation Solar Farm. The name says it all, right?
Yeah.
It was set up specifically to help rural populations. And across these agrivoltaic projects in places like Gushan, Kiangsanan, we're seeing real income increases, real job creation.
Any specific numbers on the job front?
Well, one example was a goji berry farm integrated with solar. It reportedly provides temporary work maintenance, harvesting for about 100,000 farmers.
100,000? That's incredible scale.
It is. And we found this quote from a farmer in Gansu, Qinza Ping. He's working out in these areas that used to be just shifting sand dunes.
Right.
He said he never thought he'd find work there, and he sees it as both earning a living and fighting desertification. It's powerful stuff.
So we're looking at a really significant shift in rural China.
Definitely. Over 5 million rural households now have these distributed solar systems. The investment is over 500 billion yuan. It's pulling people into the green economy, creating opportunities where maybe there weren't many before. It's clearly policy driving socioeconomic change through renewables.
Okay, but it can't all be positive, right?
Yeah.
With any project this massive, there have to be downsides, criticisms.
Oh, absolutely. And the sources we looked at are clear about those too. There are aesthetic concerns. Some people just find huge solar farms to be, well, an eyesore.
Sure, that's subjective but understandable.
And then there are serious land use issues. The amount of land needed is vast, which leads to concerns about green grabbing. You know, taking land that might have had other uses, maybe displacing people or traditional practices. We've seen local opposition pop up in places like Michigan, too. Even political figures like Trump have been critical.
Right. And what about the actual construction?
Yeah.
Building these things must have an impact.
For sure. Construction can mean habitat removal, soil erosion, dust, definite environmental disruption during that phase.
And wildlife. Panels are reflective, right?
Yeah, that's a big concern. Bird collisions are a known issue. With concentrated solar power, there's the solar flux issue, which can harm flying creatures. Plus noise pollution during operation, changes to local heat and humidity. These can all affect wildlife negatively.
So environmentalists raise flags about this energy sprawl, as Dustin Mulvaney calls it.
Right. And groups like Citizens for Responsible Solar push for using degraded land, industrial sites first, which makes sense.
It kind of brings to mind, on a different scale, maybe the Three Gorges Dam. Huge power, flood control.
But massive costs, right. Displacement of over 1 million people, lost archaeology, environmental issues.
Yeah. So the question lingers. Are the lessons from projects like that being applied here with this equally massive solar expansion?
It's a critical question. But then, just when you think you have the narrative pinned down, there's another shocking twist.
What now?
Studies from the UK, and they found something astonishing. Well-managed solar farms can actually benefit biodiversity.
Benefit how? After all those potential harms.
It comes down to how they're managed. These UK studies compared solar sites to typical farmland. On average, the solar farms had 3 times as many birds.
3 times? Including endangered ones.
Including endangered species like skylarks and linnets.
Okay, how does that work? Why would birds flock to a solar farm?
Well, think about it. A lot of solar farms take a hands-off approach to the ground underneath. Less mowing, crucially, No fertilizers, no pesticides.
Creating better habitat than intensively farmed land.
Exactly. The soil gets healthier, wildflowers can grow. Some sites are even actively designed with biodiversity in mind, planting native meadows, adding ponds. They aim for biodiversity net gain.
Net gain. So more biodiversity than before the farm was built.
Yes, sometimes achieving gains of up to 70%. It shows that the negative impacts aren't inevitable. With thoughtful design and management, you can actually reverse them, create positive ecological outcomes.
That's a really hopeful counterpoint. It's not just about mitigating harm, but potentially creating benefits.
Precisely. It changes the whole calculation.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit to the global picture. China's role in just making the solar panels. It's huge, right?
Oh, it's dominant. Over 80% of the entire supply chain, from polysilicon to finished panels, the top 10 equipment suppliers, all Chinese.
And that's driven costs down globally, which is good for everyone wanting solar.
Definitely a major factor in making solar so cheap worldwide. But it also creates vulnerabilities, doesn't it? Relying so heavily on one country for the supply chain.
Yeah, that's a point often raised. How does this compare to, say, the U.S. transition?
Well, the U.S. is seeing big growth, too. Projections for solar, batteries, wind are all up. Energy storage hit records in 2024. And policies like the Inflation Reduction Act are trying to boost domestic manufacturing.
Right, trying to build up that homegrown supply chain.
Exactly. But the energy mix looks different. In 2023, the U.S. actually got a slightly higher percentage of its electricity from zero-carbon sources overall, if you include nuclear.
Right.
But China leads in the percentage coming specifically from renewables, solar, wind, hydro, about 31% in China versus 22% in the U.S., so different paths to decarbonization.
Interesting contrast. It brings to mind that quote from Barack Obama.
About making clean energy the profitable energy.
Yeah, that seems key. And what we're seeing in China, especially with these multi-purpose solar farms, it kind of feels like they're trying to make that happen, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Showing renewables can pay off economically, socially, and maybe even ecologically in these really surprising ways.
I think that's a fair assessment. So wrapping up this deep dive, the picture that emerges is genuinely one of shocking transformation.
Yeah, it's far from simple.
These aren't just power plants anymore. They're evolving into these multifunctional landscapes. They're driving ecological restoration in deserts. They're boosting farming. They're lifting people out of poverty. It's profoundly unexpected.
And we definitely covered the uncomfortable truths, the real risks and criticisms, land use, wildlife impacts.
Absolutely. Those can't be ignored.
But then there's this powerful, almost hopeful counter-narrative emerging that with the right approach, careful planning, thoughtful management.
You can turn those negatives into positives. You can actually enhance biodiversity, become ecological assets, not just energy assets.
So it leaves you, the listener, with a pretty big thought, doesn't it? Given that we need clean energy and land is always precious.
How do we rethink this whole relationship between our technology and the natural world? Could this mountain carpeting thing in China, these surprising synergies, could they be a model?
A glimpse maybe of a future where energy production and ecological health aren't fighting each other, but actually working together, maybe even helping each other.
It's a provocative idea. It certainly challenges conventional thinking about development and conservation.
It really does. It makes you think about that Jane Goodall quote. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. Maybe these solar farms in all their complexity offer a really potent example of the kinds of unexpected positive differences that are possible. We really encourage you to dig into the sources we use, explore this further. It's a fascinating, fast-moving story.